Chapter 886. One Step Closer. After working day and night, they had taken all the necessary first kills from the Heavenly Domain dungeons. All that was left were dungeons of larger scale, like those involving 50 or 100 players. There was no exact answer for whether a group of pro players could clear those dungeons higher level than themselves because no one had tried before. It wasn't possible for a pro player to hang around in game all day. This was only a special occasion where they had a small break during the season, so it was not like the summer at the end of the season. There was a match waiting for them after these 2 weeks were up, so they couldn't muck around and slack off during this period of time either. After chatting casually with the pro players in the pro player chat, Yi Shu returned to the game. "What are we doing today?" everyone asked. "Making a guide," Yi Shu said. "Guide?" Everyone stared blankly. "I'll be making a guide. You guys use this time to practice," Yi Shu said. Everyone scattered afterwards. Seeing that they weren't going to dungeon today, Mo Fan became disappointed immediately. He didn't expect that Yi Shu would turn around and instructed Wei Chen, "You go help them practice in the dungeons." Wei Chen nodded. Team Happy didn't have the specialized training software the pro teams did. This was why all of their training contents were achieved by manipulating various kinds of environments in-game. Of course, there was no lack of content for training in a dungeon, especially training which involved aspects of teamwork and mutual understanding. The dungeon's entry was limited, so they couldn't practice repetitively, but this didn't put a dent in the players' resolve. The entry was limited, but their accounts were not, so Happy prepared side accounts of all classes. Everyone would use the side accounts, equip them, and run the dungeons. But if it continues like this, when are we going to reach level 75? Chen Guo was doubtful. Their characters were not like pro characters of pro teams in the first place. Those guilds could level continuously for 24 hours. For the available time they had, part of it would be spent on training side accounts. Chen Guo thought it was quite a pity. Compared to leveling up, it's more important to maintain their daily training, Yi Shu said. With our strength, it's unlikely for us to lose just because our opponent has the advantage in level. In addition, they might not even have this advantage either. We spend more time playing the game than most players. Chen Guo thought it was reasonable, so she didn't speak anymore. Due to Yi Shu's absence, the team was missing one person, but Happy's current guild strength wasn't exactly sitting at 0, so they were still able to call for someone to take his spot. However, a normal person wasn't able to pick up the burden of covering for Yi Shu in combat ability. Even the role of the main tank, which Yi Shu was always in charge of, couldn't be replaced by a player specialized in the Knights class. In the end, they found a healer. The main tank's job was taken over by the valiant girl, Tang Ru. The group found a 10-player dungeon and immediately entered it. As for Yi Shu, he also pulled out a group of people from the guild. Hearing that they were going to enter a level 75 dungeon, the players were quite enthusiastic in signing up. Normal players wouldn't even dare to dream about entering a level 75 dungeon, even if it was just a small 5-player dungeon, but how could the people who joined Guild Happy not know about Lord Grimm's capabilities? Last night, those people from Happy were able to take down all kinds of first kill records. This attracted a lot of admiration from players of other guilds. Now that Lord Grimm was about to lead them to complete a dungeon, even though it wouldn't be a first kill, it was enough to be enthusiastic about. Chen Guo was more familiar with the players in the guild, so it was Chen Guo who recommended a few decent players in the end. After entering the dungeon with the small team, Yi Shu immediately started to study the dungeon in detail. The dungeon guide he was making this time was different from the efficient guides he had made in the 10th server, which aimed to break the record. Instead, he was aiming for a safe guide that aimed to complete the dungeon consistently. Evidently, Yi Shu wanted to mobilize the guild's strength of Happy early on. Otherwise, it would take forever for just the 10 of them to collect enough equipment for themselves. No one knew how much more effort it would take to lead a bunch of normal players instead of pro players, but this could also reveal more problems, so the guide would just have to be more specific. After all, the guidebook Yi Shu was working on this time wasn't for pro players, but for normal guild players. After coming out of the dungeon, Yi Shu's thoughts were merely in its rudimentary form, but the normal players were almost excited to death because they were able to get a purple level 75 equipment from this dungeon. The probability of getting a purple equipment in a 5-player dungeon was low enough, so the chance of getting an orange was even lower. Purple equipment were already rare enough to most normal players. This process continued for the second and third time. After all, it was truly difficult for a normal player to kill a mob that was 5 levels higher. As a result, making the guide was much more difficult for Yi Shu. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. Yi Shu worked hard on the guide, but on the other team, Mo Fan was not relaxed at all. Even though Yi Shu wasn't present, Wei Chen's competence in leading the dungeon was enough. Of course, it wasn't hard to come up with sets of fighting methods that required coordination. As for Mo Fan, Wei Chen wasn't Yi Shu, so he didn't hold back like Yi Shu did. Wei Chen would directly call Mo Fan out when leading. Since Mo Fan realized the reason he couldn't have a high damage output was because he didn't fit into the team's fighting style, he didn't reject the way they fought. Under Wei Chen's command, there were many puzzle pieces that fell into place for him. So it's meant to be like this. However, for a rookie in training like Mo Fan, understanding by itself just wasn't enough. He still made errors and mistakes continuously. Wei Chen's way of commanding was also much ruder. Words like idiot, dumbass, and retard flowed out of his mouth like a river. Which person received a majority of these insults? Mo Fan, of course. Mo Fan was also stuffed with anger from the insults, but Wei Chen's insults weren't unreasonable. As an unfavorable scrap picker, Mo Fan had heard all kinds of insults to his face and behind his back, so his tolerance for insults wasn't bad. When the statistics came out after the boss was defeated, his results were always disastrous, but whenever it was time to check the DPS charts, the outcome was too devastating to even look at. They were currently running 10-player dungeons, so unlike 20-player dungeons, it wouldn't be so bad that he couldn't find something to do within the team. In the past, for this dungeon, Mo Fan dealt more damage than Chen Guo and Luo Ji when he fought alone, but now that he had been integrated into the team system, Mo Fan's damage output couldn't even compare to those twos. Fortunately, he understood that this wasn't an issue in strategy, but rather his ability to integrate and coordinate properly with the others. Mo Fan continued to work hard. With every boss that they defeated, his DPS improved. 3 days had passed now. Yi Shu had finally finished his first guide draft. As for Mo Fan, he had finally surpassed Chen Guo's Chasing Haze and Luo Ji's Concealed Light on the charts. His achievements so far were still rather subpar though. But for Chen Guo and Luo Ji, this already hurt their hearts. It had only been a few days, yet Mo Fan had pretty much grasped how to coordinate with the team. His grasp of the foundations made these two players extremely envious. Chapter 887. Guide. Yi Shu's guide this time was different from his guides in the 10th server. At that time, the purpose of his guide had been for dungeon records, which required high precision. No matter how well he wrote that guide, it was simply not possible for every player to follow along. But this guide? The main purpose was to teach players how to clear the level 75 dungeons. Although the guide had certain requirements, Yi Shu wasn't aiming for efficiency, so the easier it was, the more people could use the guide. This type of guide wasn't just for the guild elite teams to use, but rather the general population. As a result, using the guide as their guild's sole weapon wasn't an option. Although Guild Happy was still weak, the rain and wind that followed Yi Shu in the heavenly domain definitely caught the eye of the club guilds. It wasn't possible that his guild had no spies in it. This type of dungeon guide didn't require a text document to read. Just by following a team a couple of times, an experienced player would be able to replicate the strategy on his own almost perfectly. When the time came, the spies would share the information that they had learned, so why not just take the initiative to knock on their doors? As a result, once the first guide was completed, Yi Shu sent a mass message to all of the guild leaders on his friends list. Guide, would anyone like a guide? What guide? The first one to reply was Tyrannical Ambitions Zhang Yu. This guild leader had personally experienced the buying and selling of guides in the 10th server, so he was especially sensitive to this type of news and reacted swiftly. Afterwards, the other guild leaders followed up. No guild sat by idly. A level 75 dungeon guide that teaches you how to beat the dungeon even with a level disadvantage, allowing you to compete for all sorts of records. Yi Shu mass messaged again and described his guide with attractive words. Guild Happy had filled the record board with first kills and first clears. Yi Shu himself was a god, so the guild leaders didn't question the efficacy of the guide. However, they also knew Yi Shu wasn't here because of his sense of altruism, so one of the enlightened guild leaders asked, "What price?" "It's not that expensive. A level 75 orange equip. Any would do," Yi Shu said. Unless it was a dungeon record reward, the drop rate for orange equipment was very low. However, the club guilds had a vast player base and didn't lack in strength. With this guide, countless players could immediately begin clearing these dungeons. Considering the number of players and teams that could run the dungeon at a time, the production of orange equipment was eventually ensured. No level 75 orange equipment had appeared in the market yet, but that didn't mean the price was very high. This time, Yishu's asking price was quite conservative. He was worried about the guild leaders calling him out for being shameless, leading them to think about the deal more carefully. Once they pondered over it, they would most likely figure out that this wasn't the only means to obtain this guide. If he gave an asking price that these club guilds considered trivial, these big shots would be too lazy to bother haggling and simply slam down the hammer. Sure, as expected, many of the guild leaders nodded their heads, but they didn't forget to ask, but we don't have any at the moment. We'll pay you when we get one. Alright, Yishu replied. Apart from those guilds who held records, none of the other ones had any level 75 orange equipment, so their words weren't false. Speaking of which, these guild leaders had no reason to act as shamelessly as little thieves. Even if the two sides were competitors, relying on such a despicable and low method was too unscrupulous. Soon afterwards, he asked for the guild leaders' emails and started sending out the guides. At this moment, he received a message from Lulan Slash, who appeared rather distressed. God, is this necessary? It's just an orange piece of equipment and not anything major, but you still want to trade it for a guide? Doesn't that seem kind of pointless? As a matter of fact, to these powerful guilds, an orange piece of equipment was nothing. Lulan Slash's mind was very clear. No matter how good of a relationship he had, when it was time to settle a debt, he would not hesitate, but this matter made him feel rather gloomy. He clearly felt that an orange piece of equipment shouldn't qualify to be elevated to the status of even brothers' accounts should be settled without ambiguity. Yishu's actions made him feel uncomfortable. Oh, don't mind it. I just mass messaged all the guild leaders in my friends list, Yishu. Oh, so it's like that. Lulan Slash felt relieved. I'll send you a guide in a bit. With our relationship, the fee obviously isn't needed, Yishu said. Of course, Lulan Slash was very happy. He soon sent the guide to everyone. Not long afterwards, the guild leaders PME'd him. What? That's it? Yishu had only sent them a 5-player dungeon guide. Did you think an orange equip would be enough to trade for every single dungeon? Yishu justified. So you're saying one dungeon, one orange equip? All of the guild leaders asked. Yes. Will there be any other dungeon guides? Everyone asked. Do you guys still need them? Of course. Then yes. Hurry up and send them. Wait, I'm still in the process of creating them, Yishu replied. In fact, not only had he not written them yet, he hadn't even done any research on them yet. The first guide was sent out just like this. Afterwards, each guild had their own arrangements. After Yishu gave the guide to Chen Guo and Wu Chen, he continued with his work. Second guide, third guide. After Yishu wrote these guides, he directly sent them to the guilds. If it was too much, no one said anything. It wasn't a $20 million trade or anything. At midnight every day, the dungeons would refresh. Yishu would go with everyone and run 10-player dungeons. During that time, he noted if he could also create a guide for that 10-player dungeon, but after observing for a while, he gave up in the end. The difficulty of a 10-player dungeon was much higher than the difficulty of a 5-player dungeon. Yishu joined the team and naturally took up the role as the leader. It was rare for Mo Fan to get a peaceful atmosphere, but Wei Chen was too used to yelling at him. Even though he wasn't leading anymore, as soon as he saw that Mo Fan was doing something wrong, he called him an idiot, a fool, a dumbass, and so on, just like he had before. Mo Fan could only grind his teeth and quietly endure the insults. On the DPS charts, his numbers continued to improve. He was constantly getting better and he knew it. Club Excellent Era. After the talk with Xiao Shikan, Kui Li went to talk with Chen Yahui, requesting him not to focus on Yi Chu and concentrate on their guild's long-term development instead. Chen Yahui hadn't been in the meeting between Kui Li and the team, so he naturally had no idea why Kui Li suddenly said that to him. After thinking about it, he hadn't crossed paths with Yi Chu recently. Their club hadn't suffered any losses because of Yi Chu. Even so, Chen Yahui acknowledged Kui Li's words. Don't focus on Yi Chu? Are you saying our biggest competitor isn't Yi Chu this season? Chen Yahui said. It's still Yi Chu, but we can't lose our cool just because of him. Don't you think we put too much pressure on ourselves because of how highly we hold Yi Chu? In terms of tactics, we definitely won't underestimate him. No one knows how terrifying Yi Chu is better than us. However, in terms of strategy, we need to look down on him so our team can maintain a calm mindset. Chen Yahui more or less understood Kui Li's intentions. What he was puzzled about was that Kui Li was talking about the team. What did that have to do with the guild? Since the update, what has Yi Chu done? Kui Li suddenly asked again before Chen Yahui could complete his thoughts. As soon as Kui Li mentioned this matter, Chen Yahui forgot about whatever strategy or looked down. His heart was fretful. Have you not looked at the game? Have a look. Chen Yahui turned his monitor with the game screen on it for Kui Li to see. Then, he opened up the level 75 dungeon record boards. The 4 guild happy names on the first clear board stood out. Apart from that, there were a bunch of other names. Kui Li immediately noticed Lord Grimm. After looking at the other names, he stared blankly. These are Tiny Herbs players. Yeah, the night the update came out, the pro players were all sleeping, so Yi Chu led Team Happy and achieved a bunch of first kills. Once morning came and the pro players logged on to see the update, the other records were split, but at that moment, Yi Chu collaborated with Team Tiny Herb and took down a 20-player dungeon together, Chen Yahui explained. Oh, Kui Li replied. I feel like the players on our team still have plenty of energy. At this moment, why didn't we let them go for any records? Chen Yahui was very depressed about it. He had talked to Kui Li about the matter of Team Excellent Era having energy to spare. When the update was dropped, he felt like it was the perfect opportunity. Who would have thought the club would remain idle and let Yi Chu take the spotlight? If Excellent Era's players had stayed up all night yesterday, wouldn't half of those records be under Excellent Dynasty's name? See. I told you before to pay attention, to calm yourself and keep your heart steady. Now you've gone over the top. I decided to reconsider sending our pro players to go into the game and beat Happy. The center of our work should revolve around studying the new update. In particular, working together with the technology department and make sure they get what they need. As for the pro players, they need time to familiarize themselves with the update too. They don't have as much free time as you think. Kui Li said. This time, Chen Yahui was completely dumbstruck. What's going on? Suddenly, Kui Li, who had been in the trench with him, had leapt out. You're going to let Yi Chu continue his rampage? Kui Li added again. As for Happy, just think of them as another club guild like in the past and do what you need to do. Chen Yahui was about to cry. He couldn't help but retort, like in the past. In the past, what guild had a god like Yi Chu watching over them? Chapter 888. Sweep away. Chen Yahui's retort stumped Kui Li. For a moment, he didn't know how to respond. A god watching over a guild for a long period of time had never happened before. However, how much of a difference could one person make? Kui Li couldn't come up with any suggestions. In the end, he could only act like he was a leader. You're more experienced with matters in the game. I trust that you'll be able to deal with it accordingly. Chen Yahui really wanted to cough up blood on Kui Li's face. Fortunately, he could also see that Kui Li only appeared to be casting the matter aside. That didn't mean he had truly flung it aside. He just couldn't come up with any good suggestions for the time being. How do we deal with Yi Chu? This topic had been studied by every team in the Alliance for 7 years. Only one team managed to luckily escape this predicament, Yi Chu's home team, Excellent Era. But now, the Alliance no longer directly competed with Yi Chu, so they could turn a blind eye towards him and be worry-free. On the other hand, Excellent Era would need to face Yi Chu in the Challenger League. There was only way to return to the Alliance through the Challenger League. The single subject that Excellent Era hadn't bothered studying for 7 years now needed to be compensated in this short amount of time. Whether it was in the game or in a match, they would need to face Yi Chu. Ask other teams for help? No. That would be too disgraceful. Kui Li was conflicted. Excellent Era had forced Yi Chu to retire because they knew that Yi Chu was too difficult to deal with. As a result, they didn't want him to run to another team and cause trouble for them. They didn't think that he would be so stubborn and refuse to give up even after being forced out of the competitive scene. He even became Excellent Era's biggest problem. Look down on him in strategy, pay attention to him in tactics. Queeley's mental state started to become unbalanced again. He immediately recited those words silently to himself. After reciting these words twice, a light bulb suddenly flashed in his head. The responsibility of dealing with Yi Chu still fell onto this person. Xiao Shikan. How to deal with Yi Chu was a problem that Xiao Shikan had certainly worked with during his career on Thunderclap. An Excellent Era had all sorts of detailed information on Yi Chu. Why not let Xiao Shikan study those thoroughly? This year had gone by too chaotically. Queeley slapped his forehead. I still have business to take care of. I'll be going. Queeley patted Chen Yahui's shoulder and said goodbye. He had an idea on how to deal with Yi Chu, so he left. Chen Yahui was still standing there in a daze though. The week break for the update flew by. In the blink of an eye, it was already 12/14. The 9th season of the Pro Alliance would resume again. In these 11 days of intense leveling, there was very little difference in the leveling speed by the Pro Team's characters. After these 11 days, all of them had reached level 75. It was confirmed as soon as the first day began. According to the dungeon and monster experience gained, all of the clubs had calculated everything accurately. If it wasn't enough to get these characters to max level, how could they allow the pro players to take their pro characters into the game and familiarize themselves with the update instead of power leveling? In terms of levels, the pro characters had no advantage. Since they could reach level 75, other characters being power leveled all day and all night naturally hit level 75 too. That didn't only include the core characters of the club guilds. Among the normal player base, there were many who leveled like crazy too. During this time, all of them knew that whoever reached level 75 first would have certain advantages. Reaching level 75 first meant getting a head start in dungeons and getting a head start on acquiring stronger level 75 equipment. The club guild players weren't worried about this point though because they had obtained guides from Lord Grimm and had started clearing level 75 dungeons long ago. For them, leveling wasn't as pressing a matter. In the 6 new level 75 Heavenly Domain maps, there were a total of 10 5-player dungeons. Yi Shu worked sedulously on his guides. Even though they would be able to reach level 75 quickly through power leveling, it didn't mean Yi Shu's guides had no value to them. Once their players reached level 75, they would begin challenging these dungeons for the first time. Familiarizing themselves with every dungeon would take a lot more time than reaching level 75. However, with Yi Shu's guide, everything was now easily solved. If the dungeon could be beaten by lower level players, then once the players reached level 75, it would be even less of a problem for them. Each 5-player dungeon guide required 1 piece of orange equipment. With 10 guides, that meant 10 orange equips from each team. There were 20 teams in the alliance. Excluding their friends, Heavenly Sword, there were 19 teams for a total of 190 pieces of orange equipment. A character in Glory could equip a total of 13 pieces of equipment including their weapon. 190 pieces of orange equipment was enough to fully equip 14 characters. Of course, Yi Shu never indicated what type of orange equipment he needed. The club guilds weren't so nice as to give him their best ones. Out of these 190 pieces of orange equipment, Yi Shu reckoned that there wouldn't be a single weapon among them. From what the guilds paid him, his prediction became reality. Yi Shu could do nothing about it. After all, he didn't know what level 75 equipment each guild possessed and had no way of demanding anything specific. Moreover, these orange equips came from the dungeons that Yi Shu wrote guides for, which meant these items all came from 5-player dungeons. Orange equipment from 5-player dungeons would be of a different quality than those from higher player raids. If not, why would raids be more difficult? Why would anyone bother running 50-player or 100-player raids? In any case, level 75 equipment was still superior to level 70 equipment. Yi Shu and the others could only gaze at the equipment and lament at their own inadequacy. As of right now, no one in Team Happy had reached level 75. That didn't affect their victory yesterday in the Challenger League though. As for the Pro Alliance, their matches wouldn't be as sloppy as the Challenger League matches. Countless players held their breath for these matches, ready to see the new level 75 skills in action. They wanted to see how these skills were used in the hands of pro players. The results were rather disappointing though. Their disappointment wasn't because of the level 75 skills themselves, but rather that it seemed like all of the pro players had agreed upon beforehand not to use these new skills. In this round of matches, 20 teams played a total of 30 individual matches, 10 group arenas, and 10 team matches with 142 participating players. However, not a single player used a level 75 skill. The commentators, guests, and post-match analysis revealed the entire story. It was because the pro players still needed to study these new skills more, so they wouldn't rashly use them in such an important match. The newly obtained level 75 orange equipment from the game still gave the spectators a sight to see. Very few silver equipment had been replaced by level 75 orange equipment. However, all of the level 70 orange equipment had been completely swapped out. For small teams, this was good news. Their characters relied heavily on orange equipment. Now that their orange equipment had also improved, their character's strength naturally improved a level too. As for those important ace characters that relied on silver equipment, for now, their silver equipment could not be upgraded to level 75 in a short amount of time. Level 75 orange equipment didn't lose out to level 70 silver equipment in terms of stats, but in terms of bonuses, the majority were slightly lacking. Consequently, it can be seen that before level 75 silver equipment replaced level 70 silver equipment, because of the value of level 75 orange equipment, the disparity in character strength between strong and weak teams would be much narrower. It would have some impact on the direction of this season's end results. Countless glory experts made this kind of analysis. In the game, as characters continue to hit the level cap and continue to acquire level 75 equipment, dungeon clear records, raids, and wild bosses began being brought up. Wild bosses once again became the most valuable commodities. But as countless guilds were wiped out, everyone knew that it was too early to battle these level 75 wild bosses. It would be best to study those large raids first and strengthen their characters. However, those were only the thoughts of ordinary people. To a god, wild bosses and raids could be carried out at the same time. However, there were too few level 75 players at Happy at the moment, so their group's strength was a bit weak. Speaking of which, everyone in the team felt a bit ashamed. None of their characters were level 75 yet, but in Guild Happy and even Guild Everlasting, there were already level 75 characters. There were too many crazy levelers out there. Let's also spend some time to level up, Yi Shu said. Their team's leveling speed wasn't fast, but their dungeon runs went smoothly. They were the only team that could run all of the 10-player dungeons every day. As for the other clubs, even though they were level 75 and had level 75 equipment, they were still working out how to clear these 10-player dungeons. Every day, their teams would get wiped out. Then, the teams could only cry as they regained their lost experience. 20-player raids didn't need to be discussed. Just take the 10-player raids and add an even worse to it. 50-player raids, 100-player raids, were the same as wild bosses. For now, they weren't considered. In the blink of an eye, a week passed. Happy had yet to meet another strong opponent in the Challenger League, so they continued to steamroll their way through it. In the game, they spent this week leveling up, so everyone finally reached level 75. At this moment, level 75 5-player dungeon records were already being contested. Blood filled the air. But that night, all 10 5-player dungeon speed records on the record board were replaced with Guild Happy's name. If it wasn't because they were limited by the number of dungeon runs possible in a day, they might have taken up spots 1 to 10 for each record with Guild Happy's name. Guild Happy's records completely left the records by other guilds in the dust. Rumors said that a player who had experienced the pioneering in the 10th server saw the record board and fainted on the spot. When he woke up, he hastily asked the surrounding players today's date and asked whether he was in the heavenly domain or in the 10th server. After hearing the reply, everyone sighed, so the nightmare was real. What happened in the 10th server is being replicated in the heavenly domain. How could this be considered a reenactment though? Team Happy's current team was much more elite than their team in the 10th server. Tang Ru and Steamed Bun were no longer noobs like before. Seeing all of these orange equips, Chen Guo couldn't conceal her joy. They truly deserve to be record rewards. They're better than those equips from those guilds, Chen Guo praised. The 190 orange equips that the guilds paid were truly low-end goods among the level 75 orange equipment circle. Chapter 889. Cannot endure. Team Happy's characters were half equipped with orange equipment. Any extra orange equipment was thrown into the guild storage and was more than enough as motivation for guild members to courageously contribute to the guild. Guild Happy was currently growing at lightning speed along an expressway. The other guilds could not do anything about their growth. However, Guild Happy sweeping through the dungeon records wasn't something they could just sit and ignore. It wasn't a problem that could be resolved just by relying on the guild's strength though. This was a battlefield for the elites. Their side didn't have a god or a pro player watching over. How were they supposed to compete with Happy for dungeon records? These matters were related to the club, not the team or the pro players. In the regular meeting convened at each of the clubs, the guild departments reported it as an important problem. In the 10th server, when Yi Chu had summoned the winds and rain, the guild departments only relied on their own efforts to resist. But this time, in the heavenly domain, Yi Chu raised an even fiercer storm and swept across the lands. So far, he had only swept through the 5-player dungeons, but they were certain that ruling over 10-player, 20-player, and even greater raids was only a matter of time. Perhaps it was because of their previous experience in the 10th server. This time, the guild departments did not fight back. By raising this issue in the regular meeting, they expressed that this issue required the strength of the entire club to resolve. But it wasn't an easy problem to solve for the clubs either. Did they need to send pro players to fight for these records? A single time wasn't a big deal, but if they failed and it affected the conditions of their players in a match, not only would they not be taking back a sesame seed, they would be losing a watermelon along the way. Because as soon as a dungeon record was set, everyone knew that their opponents wouldn't just be Yi Chu, but the other clubs as well. If your guild can send out pro players, so can ours. As a result, the pro players would all be competing for dungeon records. At that point, would they still competing in the pro league? Maybe they could reach a compromise? Send out their subs to try? But thinking about it again, their subs winning a wrestle against God Yi Chu? What a bold and imaginative dream. The clubs were unable to find a situation. The 15th match of the season taking place on the 21st was imminent. No matter the case, the league was their number one priority. For now, this problem would have to be put aside. Once this round was over and they finished analyzing their gains and losses from these matches, by the time they began figuring out how to deal with these dungeon records, everyone realized that it was only a few days until Christmas. According to the usual glory schedule, starting from Christmas to New Year's to the Spring Festival, this period of time would often have seasonal events. In the pro scene, their grand event was the All-Star Weekend. No one knew what the contents of this year's Christmas event would be, but from past experience, these events were gifts to the players. The rewards would often be bountiful. During this event period, the club guilds would focus their efforts on doing a good job on these events. Dungeons and wild bosses could even be put aside. Yes, put aside. The clubs clearly felt like procrastinating because they didn't have a good solution at the moment. Seeing that it was almost Christmas, they let out a sigh of relief. While the clubs relaxed, Happy was still advancing rapidly. After sweeping the 10 5-player dungeons, it was now time for the 3 10-player dungeons. This time, Happy wasn't spending close to 3 hours challenging the dungeon for their first time. Everyone was fully equipped with level 75 equipment. After hitting the level cap, they received the extra stats and skill points. For these 10-player dungeons, they would be aiming for the dungeon record. Right now, they only had one opponent for the 10-player dungeon records, the system's initial minimum record. This record wasn't easy to beat either. Normal players needed a good amount of time to familiarize themselves with the dungeon before having a chance at breaking it. In theory, a character only had a single chance every day to run a 10-player dungeon, so the amount of practice was limited. But rules were dead and people were alive. A character could only try once, but multiple characters meant more tries, no? Team Happy's conditions were limited. They didn't have any special training programs. As a result, this 10-player dungeon had become practice for training their team coordination, so their familiarity with the dungeon didn't need to be mentioned. They set all 3 dungeon records in a single day. Moreover, their record times just barely beat the system's bottom line. It was only by a bit. Everyone was still thinking to themselves. But the same day, these 3 dungeon records were set again. The record holders were still happy and their current times only surpassed their previous times by a tiny bit. It was still Team Happy, but the characters were different. Normal players who didn't understand the situation might be misdirected, but the club guilds knew clear as day what was going on. Breaking a record by just a little bit seemed very normal, but that was usually in the mid to later stages. In the initial stages, because their research on the dungeons weren't thorough enough, when a new strategy came out, a big leap would be made. The record time would often jump around between record holders for a period of time. But right now, Happy had broken the record twice and just by a bit. In their eyes, they could tell at a glance that these guys were holding back and intentionally exercising control. These guys knew for certain that no other team could even attempt to challenge a 10-player dungeon record. No one could compete against them, so they kept on beating their own records a bit at a time in order to acquire those dungeon record rewards. The club guilds yearned for this type of method in their dreams. Whenever a new level cap came out, the reason that they leveled like crazy, using all sorts of ways to improve as fast as possible, was because they wanted to be ahead of the other guilds by half a step. With just a bit of freedom over their competition, they would have the chance to do what they wanted. But with the current state of affairs, this type of opportunity was difficult to find. Right now, Team Happy was doing what normal players couldn't do and living this type of blissful life. The club guilds were envious and jealous of them. If they had enough account cards, how many times could they set a record today? It was only twice though, because Happy didn't have so many account cards. Apart from their own characters, the extra account cards being used had been power leveled by game studios. Power leveling right now was at its highest price, but they couldn't care about that right now. Compared to taking care of a club and a team, this kind of expense was nothing. Were these 10-player dungeons going to be toyed around with by Happy just like this? Just when the various club guilds were shaking their heads in pain, someone finally acted. Excellent Dynasty. Because Team Happy hadn't been going all out, leaving room to improve for these records, when Excellent Dynasty came out full force with their team, the times improved by an enormous jump. When everyone took a look at the list of characters holding the record, One Autumn Leaf, Life Extinguisher. All sorts of famous characters. Excellent Era had been relegated this season, so they no longer appeared in the alliance matches. Numerous fans felt incomparably reminiscent. They could only run over to the Challenger League to see these resplendent characters. Now, they had run to the game. When the other guilds saw this scene, they knew that it was a confrontation between two direct competitors. Their clubs were afraid of affecting their players and didn't dare to make any rash movements. However, Excellent Era was slaughtering their way through the Challenger League like a butcher with a meat cleaver. Seeing Happy abusing everyone like a tyrant, how could they bear it? Indeed. Excellent Era couldn't endure it anymore. After talking with Xiao Shiken, Kui Li had made it clear that they would be ridding themselves of Yi Chu's shadow, but once he heard Chen Yahui reporting Happy's string of explosive movements in the heavenly domain, he was still swayed. Excellent Era had two advantages over Happy. Their first advantage was having more experienced pro players. Their second advantage was having stronger pro characters. For the former, the other side had Yi Chu and a bunch of unknown guys who seemed unreliable but weren't as simple as they looked. The other side was constantly improving and the disparity between them was constantly shrinking. For the latter, they originally thought that Happy had no way of closing this gap in a short amount of time, but who would have thought that after almost 3 years, they would finally come out with a new update and raise the level cap. With the level cap being raised, although leveling to 75 only took 11 days, upgrading their silver equipment from level 70 to 75 wasn't a matter of just 11 days. Excellent Era had stronger characters because they had stronger equipment. But with the level cap raised, their silver equipment would require weeks to upgrade. However, Happy could close the gap between themselves and Excellent Era during this time through level 75 orange equipment. Their advantage that they had considered as firmly set in place was currently fading away. Especially with Happy's current efficiency at gaining level 75 orange equipment. Running dungeons, obtaining first kills, selling guides, setting records. They had two teams too, using the 10-player dungeon clear speed records as their playthings. Kui Li believed that if Excellent Era still sat by and watched indifferently, it would be negligence on their part in terms of tactics. As a result, Kui Li looked for Sun Xiang and Xiao Shiken, asking for their thoughts. Attacking Happy from the game. When Sun Xiang heard this idea, he instantly felt invigorated. His fighting spirit made Kui Li extremely happy. As for Xiao Shiken, he quietly sighed to himself. Sure enough, Yi Chu's influence on this team was rooted deeply. It wasn't something that could be pulled out with just a few words. Perhaps the only way to completely rid of themselves of Yichu's mental shackles was to beat Yichu. But how were they going to beat Yichu while carrying this type of pressure on their shoulders? Xiao Shiken discovered that he was facing a problem that couldn't be solved. H also felt worried. But no matter what, beating Yichu had already become his most important task. Kui Li represented the club's interests. It seemed like he wanted to start fighting Yichu and Happy from the game. However, Xiao Shiken knew clearly that in-game matters were complicated. It wasn't as simple as a 1 versus 1 or a 5 versus 5 battle. On stage, Excellent Era held an absolute advantage. But this type of advantage was crippled when brought into the game. Chapter 890. Where the crucial point lies. If it's a confrontation in-game, I'd recommend not using our pro characters. Kui Li seemed to have made his decision, so Xiao Shiken did not refuse and only put forward a small suggestion. Annoying. What's there to be scared of? Before Kui Li could respond, Captain Sun Shang expressed his displeasure with Xiao Shiken's recommendation. Sun Shang had come to Excellent Era for one autumn leave to begin with, so no matter what he did, he wanted to use this character. Previously, when he followed Lu Hao to the game, he had done so without the club's knowledge, so he naturally didn't dare to use the team's character, but now it was the club's idea, so Sun Shang wasn't willing to use an alternate account. Kui Li noticed Sun Zhang's fierce fighting spirit today and didn't want to lower his morale. In the end, he waved it off. That's not a big problem. Just don't bring any silver equipment. Sun Shang had actually wanted to go into the game fully equipped with silver equipment, but since the decision had been made, he could only respect it. Soon afterwards, Excellent Era gathered together a team of 10 players and contacted Chen Yahui to swap out their equipment. Then, they tackled a 10-player dungeon full force. How unfortunate. If we could bring our silver equipment, we could guarantee a time that they could only dream of. The team had broken the record already, yet Sun Shang was still grumbling about his current character. Although Guild Excellent Dynasty was who knew how many times larger than Guild Happy, in just this short amount of time, they weren't able to gather as many pieces of orange equipment, let alone complete sets of them. For these pro characters, after swapping out their silver equipment for level 75 orange equipment, they were indeed weakened because they didn't have a full set equipped, which was why Sun Shang was complaining. After exiting the dungeon, the 10 players headed to the next 10-player dungeon along with a group of Excellent Dynasty elites personally led by Chen Yahui. Excellent Era has come out, Chen Guo said, while looking at Yi Shu. Everyone in Happy had seen the record too. When she checked the record board, one Autumn Leaf's name was among the list of names. If Yi Shu saw it, would he be affected? Chen Guo couldn't help but worry. It looks like we can't relax, Yi Shu said. Let's go dungeon. It turned out that Happy still hadn't attempted breaking the 10-player dungeon record today. Wu Chen, have your guild keep a lookout for Excellent Era's movements. Yi Shu called out to Wu Chen, and sent his own message to Guild Happy. At the same time, he looked for Heavenly Justice, Conquering Clouds, Radiant, and his other alliance partners to also help out. With so many people scouting, a reply came back not long afterwards. A bunch of people from Excellent Dynasty were marching majestically towards Barrier Mountains. Barrier Mountains. Everyone hurry and gather together, Yi Shu called out to everyone. Seeing that Excellent Dynasty was heading towards Barrier Mountain, Excellent Dynasty had at least already teleported to the nearest main city and had reached that map. The players on Happy headed over there, while gathering together. Afterwards, they rushed towards Barrier Mountain's 10-player dungeon, Sealed Mountain Thief Hideout. There was never only a single dungeon entrance. Yi Shu didn't know which entrance Excellent Dynasty's people entered from. He only knew that they needed to hurry and beat this dungeon before they did. Work hard, everyone. This time, there can't be any leechers. Concealed Light, 5 summons. Chasing Haze, be more brave with your attacks. Before entering the dungeon, Yi Shu called out and had Lord Grim rush in. Wu Chen's Dawn Rifle and Chen Guo's Chasing Haze began attacking in coordination with each other and blasted the Sealed Mountain Thieves on the left and right watchtowers. Chen Guo began tensing up, because she knew that they were truly aiming for the fastest possible time now. For the previous dungeon runs, they usually tried hard in the beginning and then relaxed in the later parts. At first, they would fight quickly. Then, once they had won enough time to beat the record, they didn't take the dungeon as seriously. However, this time, in order to pursue the fastest time possible, they couldn't make any mistakes. Despite these circumstances, Yishu still wanted her to be braver. I'll press my luck. Chen Guo was thinking too much. She definitely wasn't someone who flinched from danger. She didn't want to be their reason for failure. Chasing Haze closely followed Wu Chen's Dawn rifle. The two were practically duplicates of each other. Whatever Dawn rifle did, Chasing Haze copied. Even though she would always be slower by half a step, Chen Guo felt like she wouldn't make a mistake this way. After fighting for a while, Wu Chen noticed it and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Stop copying me. My current play style doesn't fit with your launcher. Chen Guo was startled. When she thought about her previous playstyle and looked at Dawn Rifle's weapon, she suddenly came to a realization. Dawn Rifle's weapon, hand cannon Scarlet Fire Baron. Because of the various fire element buff bonuses, Wu Chen had changed his skill tree and emphasized skills that dealt fire damage. This type of skill allocation wasn't uncommon. Launchers had a playstyle called Fire Cannon, which focused on buffing the fire element damage and using other skills to complement it. Wu Chen was a launcher pro player, so he was familiar with all sorts of playstyles for his class. Playing a Fire Cannon playstyle wasn't anything unfamiliar to him. Chen Guo's Chasing Haze was different. Her launcher belonged to a different school of thought, heavy artillery. The skill allocation was very different from Fire Cannon. Right now, she was drawing a tiger using a cat as a model. Wu Chen was mainly using skills like Flamethrower as damage-dealing skills, but Chasing Haze only put in a skill point into those skills and used them as control skills. Fortunately, the problem had been discovered early on. Chen Guo hastily corrected herself and stopped copying Wu Chen's Dawn rifle, relying on her own skills to fight. You can do it. At this moment, Yi Shu suddenly came over to give her a word of encouragement. Chen Guo was surprised by it and suddenly felt her heart warm up. Even though she was the worst player among everyone here, she had never been ignored. She was a part of this team. The spirited Chen Guo didn't suddenly become a pro, but she performed much better at least. Not only did she not cower away, she didn't make any mistakes. The team progressed rapidly. Happy was very familiar with this dungeon. The signal flare shot out, when the first boss Vanguard Brother Wolf fell, could be blocked. When aiming for a dungeon record, it was an extremely crucial segment. If Excellent Era didn't pay attention to this detail, they would undoubtedly be defeated. Pay attention, pay attention. Everyone pay attention. When he falls, everyone stop him with everything you have, Yi Shu shouted. We know. As if you need to tell us, Wei Chen said. The final hit. Brother Wolf was at the brink of death. He pulled out a gun from his waist and was just about to shoot. At this instant, everyone attacked, including Little Cold Hands Cleric. They focused their attacks onto the hand that held the gun. All sorts of sound effects exploded. Brother Wolf couldn't control his hand and the gun flew out. It landed on the ground. Brother Wolf didn't have enough strength to pick it back up. His eyes were filled with unwillingness and despair. He reached out towards the gun and then fell. The speedrunning team didn't care about the stupid storyline. After the gun flew out of his grasp, the team pushed forward. Everyone in Happy knew that as soon as the gun dropped, this boss segment was over. They were trying to break a record. There was no time to watch Brother Wolf's bitter struggle. They crushed the small monsters and then killed the second boss with their usual strategy. Afterwards, by the time Advisor Frigid Eagle screeched, "Why are you guys here?" Happy had already surrounded him and attacked. This boss wasn't difficult. The pertinent plot wasn't triggered and the following segment had no monsters. The fourth boss, Brown Bear, became a boss that didn't need to be fought. For a normal dungeon run, the boss drops mattered much more than speed, so an optional boss wouldn't be skipped, but for a speedrunning team, they would obviously choose not to waste time on an optional boss. Team Happy quickly rushed towards the final boss. At the same time, in the sealed Mountain Thief hideout, one autumn leaf brandished his spear. In Sun Jiang's hands, one autumn leaf swept everything in his path. The hidden troops arranged by Frigid Eagle were annihilated by him alone. With me. Hurry. We need to set a record that those guys can only dream of. This guy called out fervently to the team. He was clearly excited. From their current progress, this time-sealed Mountain Thief hideout was going even smoother than the previous dungeon. How could Sun Shang not loudly cheer? The team quickly pushed forward. Compared to when Happy first attempted the dungeon, they were who knew how many times faster. Just destroying the hidden troops and crushing Frigid Eagle simultaneously wasn't something that Team Happy had been able to accomplish on their first run. Unfortunately, Team Happy would never encounter this situation again. Team Excellent Era hadn't been like Yishu and the others, using these dungeons to practice technical skill. Towards the first boss, although they noticed that they should stop the signal flare from shooting out, they didn't know the correct method to do so. To knock the gun out of the hand, it wasn't just a matter of attacking. Enough damage had to be dealt at that instant to send the gun flying. The damage requirement was quite high too. It was only after Happy swapped all of their equipment for level 75 ones and used their highest damage skills that they could do it. Team Excellent Era chased the half-health Frigid Eagle into the courtyard and then faced the fourth boss Brown Bear. The fight was as easy as ever. It wasn't nearly as nerve-wracking as when Happy went in and out of the rooms. Good, continue forward. After clearing these two bosses, Sun Shang shouted and one autumn leaf rushed towards the final boss. While they were eliminating the waves of monsters, a system announcement suddenly popped up. At Sealed Mountain Thief Hideout, Guild Happy had once again set a new record. Haha, so they're struggling to the bitter end? Sun Shang laughed. But when he looked at the time, he suddenly froze. 30 minutes 20.47 seconds. Are you joking? How could that be? Sun Shang was completely dumbfounded, so much so that the great battle god, One Autumn Leaf, was actually sent flying by a small monster. The new record set by Happy took less time than it took them to even reach the final boss.